that Valve is trying to have a more significant presence in Japan, specifically at the Tokyo Game Show, I think that this is going to be happening more often. In fact, if you go back about a year, you can see that I did a video about this very same thing when the Tokyo Game Show happened last year. And I expect I'll probably end up doing one of these every year right around this time as Valve sits down and talks with the folks over at Famistu. For Valve and for PC gaming in general, Japan is a really small market, but it's growing really fast, which is why Pierre-Luc Griffet and Lawrence Yang sat down with the folks over at Famistu, and they had an interview where they talked about a lot of things related to the Steam Deck. And there were some things in there that, while they make absolute sense after reading it, they were really surprising to me. So let's take a look at this interview, not the whole thing, obviously, but the most important parts, and let's see exactly what the folks over at Valve had to say. First off, I feel like I need to say that I don't speak Japanese, and Famitsu is one of Japan's biggest gaming publications, so obviously it's in Japanese. So I used auto translate in order to figure out exactly what was said, and I'm sure that there's some nuance lost. So first off, they were asked about how Steam's business is going, both globally and in Japan. Yang said that they are experiencing growth across their entire business, not just with the Steam Deck, but with Steam in general. In fact, that they have seen way more new Steam accounts in recent years. And they thought that maybe this had something to do with the pandemic, with people being trapped at home and playing games on PC for the first time. But even after the pandemic subsided, they ended up still seeing that same growth. And it was easiest to see it in Japan because Japan is such a small market for them. This trend is particularly evident in Japan, which has been one of the countries with the highest user growth rate over the past 5 years. Starting in 2022, many of the top titles sold on Steam will be made in Japan, contributing significantly to overall sales. 1 in 5 top titles, or 20% of the total, are Japanese titles. Now, it's important to point out that he's speaking to a Japanese publication, so that's obviously something that he's going to be highlighting because it's important to that country to see that their games are being represented on the Steam store. And by pointing that out, that basically tells Japanese gamers that, hey, we have your stuff too. But it shouldn't be a huge surprise that Valve is doing so well in Japan. I mean, think about it. They've always been a console or handheld first market. And now that Valve has a handheld that they can market over in Japan, it's obviously starting to work. Way more people are interested in playing that because they can take their games with them, which is really more of the norm over in Japan. And traditionally, the PC hasn't been super popular in Japan, so Valve is trying to make headway there, and it makes total sense why they would. You want to go to a place where you don't have a lot of current customers if you want to try and grow the market. Nintendo did this famously with the Wii. They said, look, there's a lot of people out there that play video games. We're making the Wii for people that play video games, but we're also making the Wii for people that don't generally play video games, which is why it turned out to be one of the biggest consoles of all time. Nintendo decided that instead of trying to compete on just numbers, they wanted to grow the market and capture new people. Now, it's not exactly a one-to-one argument because what Valve is doing here, they're not trying to sell to people that don't generally play games, but what they are doing is they're trying to sell to people that don't generally play PC games, and it's clear that it's working out. In fact, Pierre-Luc says, I feel that PC gaming has become more popular in Japan over the past 5 years. We also encourage developers to target their games to PC users. I think these results are contributing to the increase in the number of users and the trend of users. And for the past 2 years, we've been putting a lot of effort into developing Steam Deck. We believe that the Steam Deck will serve as an entry point for users who are just starting to play PC games. This is something that I feel like I have to often remind people in the comment section of my videos, or, even people in our community Discord that, yeah, we're all gamers that have been playing games on PC for a really long time, but that doesn't mean that every single person who's bought a Steam Deck has had a PC. In fact, there's a lot of people out there who the Steam Deck is essentially their very first gaming PC, and they don't even think of it as a gaming PC. In fact, if they did, they probably wouldn't have bought it. But because it's such a console-like experience, Valve is seeing success with people who generally will ignore that kind of device. Now, the Steam Deck didn't actually come to Japan until the end of 2022, so Valve has had almost a year now to see how it's been doing, and it's actually been doing really well. Pierre Lou says that the feedback from Japanese users has been extremely positive, and they're still focusing on letting people know what the Steam Deck is. And while you and I are huge fans of Valve, I'm sure that there's a lot of people out there who have no idea who this company is, especially if you're not PC fans, which is the majority. Well, I don't want to say it's the majority of Japan, but traditionally it's been a minority of Japan that plays PC games. They've been focusing on promotions so that people know which games that they can play on the Steam Deck, and they actually make sure that it's in stores so that people can try it out. This is something that I really think that Valve needs to be doing here in the States as well. I know that in our little bubble, we all know what the Steam Deck is. We're all paying really, really close attention to this stuff. And if you are, I would say, like a hardcore gamer, you probably know what the Steam Deck is. But casual gamers and people who never play PC games probably look at the Steam Deck and say, oh, that's a weird looking Nintendo Switch. He goes on to say, I think the first thing that you think about is whether or not you can comfortably play games on the Steam Deck. And that's something that many of us were wondering when Valve first announced this thing. Many of us, in fact, probably most of us, bought this without being able to put our hands on it. And a lot of people are probably waiting because they see this and they think it's awfully big. Like, this thing is a chonker. And until you get it in your hands, it's really hard to understand how comfortable it is to play. In fact, I have said this many times on the show. This is the most comfortable way to play video games handheld. Hands down, 100%. The Switch, no thanks. My Retroid Pocket Flip, no thanks. I don't have access to the Neo Qun or the Lenovo Legion Go, but I'm looking forward to trying those things out. The ROG Ally, pretty good, but it just doesn't hold a candle for me to the Steam Deck. The Steam Deck is incredibly comfortable, and that's something that people can't figure out until they have it in their hands, which is why it's awesome that they have it on store shelves and in kiosks in Japan, but that needs to happen here too. Now, they didn't give us hard numbers, but they did say that they were really pleased with how the Steam Deck is doing in Japan. In fact, Pierre Lou said that the Steam Deck is selling at a much faster pace in Japan than it is in other regions. Now, since they brought up other regions, I was really hoping that the interviewer would pivot and say, okay, speaking of other regions, you're running this thing in Japan and it's doing really well. When are you going to expand the Steam Deck to more regions? Because that is one thing that we see as a huge advantage that, things like the ROG Ally has over the Steam Deck is you can buy it in more places. I believe, I could be wrong about this, but I believe the ROG Ally is worldwide. And the Steam Deck is still in limited countries. Now, I understand that Valve has some legal stuff there. They have to cross T's, dot I's before they actually start shipping outside of the regions that they're doing it so far. But it's been a year since they expanded into Japan, and I was really hoping that like Australia would get some love, because I know that lots of you are from Australia. I see the comments where you guys are still not in Australia, and I want one and I can't buy one, and that is less than optimal. this really surprised me. Pierre Lou said that they share data with publishers and developers about which games are being played and for how long on the PC and Steam Deck, and they also said that 40% of users that own both a PC and a Steam Deck tend to spend more time playing games on the Steam Deck than on their PC. And I have to say, that surprised me, but it shouldn't have. That should not have surprised me because I am in that 40%. My Steam Deck is my main gaming PC. I have a gaming PC. It's got a 2060. I forget what CPU it has, but it's starting to get old at this point. And I can get pretty decent performance out of the games on my Steam Deck and playing them on a 7-inch screen wherever I want in my house versus being trapped at my over there on the couch and not being able to go elsewhere to play my games means that most times when I want to play a PC game, I reach for my Steam Deck instead of turning on my TV. And while that's true for me, I just assumed that I was a weirdo. I was an outlier. I'm still a weirdo and an outlier, but it seems not in this particular case because lots of people are doing it. It's not a majority of people, but 40% is not a small number. He continued by making a comparison between people who own a PC and own a Steam Deck, and they share an account between the two, and people who just own the Steam Deck. And he said there are quite a lot of users who use the Steam Deck as their main device. Pierre Lou jumped in and said in the early days there were many cases where existing Steam users purchased a Steam Deck, but gradually the number of new Steam Deck purchases has increased, and it tends to increase during game sales periods. And Lawrence Yang chalks this up to the fact that the Steam Deck is a very console-like experience. It makes it easy for people to jump in and just play games without really having to know how the device works. And I know that most of you and I'll say most of us, I know that most of us, we understand how stuff works and we tinker a little bit, but a lot of people are just buying this thing and using it as a console. And that's because SteamOS is so damn good. Since the Steam Deck was announced, we've seen a lot more competition in the handheld PC arena. Valve doesn't see these as competition, though. The devices like the ROG Ally, the Lenovo Legion Go, and the many other handheld PC variants that are out there, Valve looks at these and they're like, all right, that's awesome. None of these are competition to the Steam Deck. Now, did these things all show up because the Steam Deck was successful, or did these all show up for the same reason that the Steam Deck did? And that's that Nintendo was able to show that the handheld market was in dire need of something new. Nintendo shipped the Nintendo Switch. It did incredibly well. And Lenovo and Asus and Valve all started working on these things independently, but Valve was just the first one to actually bring their device to market and make that announcement. I don't know. It's possible that everybody was inspired by Nintendo, or it's also possible that these other companies that are bringing out new devices have been inspired by the Steam Deck. Pierre Lou says that they don't actually see these guys as competitors. They're working hard to make sure Steam can be used on a variety of devices, and we have seen that work happen. I mean, they have basically updated Steam Big Picture mode to mimic the Steam Deck almost one for one. Like there's very little changes between when I run big picture mode on my big screen TV, when I'm running big picture mode on my ROG Ally, or when I am just playing games on my Steam Deck. It all pretty much has the same interface, which is awesome because Valve did a really good job with that. Did draw a line separating the Steam Deck from its competitors. I'll call them competitors, even though Valve doesn't. He said that while we developed Steam Deck with a clear purpose and vision optimized specifically for gaming, other companies' products might prioritize other aspects. We are also positive about the fact that portable gaming PCs and such various characteristics are being created. Basically saying, look, We want more people to play games on PC. And if that means that other companies are going to be making devices that can play the games that are on our store, then we win anyway. And that's something that Valve has been saying from the very beginning, which is why they've said that they plan on releasing SteamOS to be used everywhere, not just on the Steam Deck. And sure, you can run Holo ISO, or you can try and shoehorn SteamOS onto your hardware, but a lot of people, myself included, are waiting for SteamOS to get that official release so that I can run it on whatever hardware I want. For instance, I don't have an AMD graphics card. I have an NVIDIA GeForce RTX 2060 in my main gaming rig, and that's absolutely not going to be supported by SteamOS, at least not yet. And we have seen tons of updates to SteamOS since Valve first launched the Steam Deck. In fact, when it first launched, the docked mode of the Steam Deck was an absolute... Boy, it was real bad. It was so bad, in fact, that I hypothesized that Valve purposely did not launch the dock until they fixed the issues that went with Steam docked mode with the Steam Deck, because it was slow, it was clunky, there were all kinds of issues where text would either be huge or unreadable. But as soon as they fixed all that, they said, okay, now our dock is available for purchase. When the Steam Deck first launched, we didn't have the ability to change the refresh rate of the screen. If you don't know what that means, essentially think of your frame rate of your game as one thing and the refresh rate of your screen as a different thing. If those two things aren't the same or are not divisible by each other, you'll start to see latency, you'll start to see stuttering, and it's not generally a good experience. Valve gave us the ability to lower the refresh rate of our screen so that we can more closely match the frame rates that our games can hit, since the Steam is kind of underpowered hardware. And that is a huge feature that Valve launched after the Steam Deck came out, and it feels like it's been here the whole time because it is so well implemented. They also added per game profiles so that your changes that you make to your quick access menu don't persist across all of your games, just on a per game profile basis. They also gave us the ability to lock it so that nobody could use it but us. And we have the next iteration of SteamOS right around the corner with a brand new Linux kernel. We've got ways to change the saturation of the screen and a whole bunch of other changes under the hood. And the interviewer asked them what are some areas of improvement that they can make with the Steam Deck, and Pierre-Loup replied with all of the changes that they've been making to the software. The interviewer then pivoted to hardware, and I gotta say, you and I don't have the same Steam Deck because this is a prototype version that Valve sent me before it was actually launched. But for somebody who bought it recently and somebody who bought like launch day, those Steam Decks aren't the same either, because Valve has done a whole bunch of small revisions that they haven't even told people about. Yank says we don't make every change public, but we do make small changes behind the scenes. The same goes for hardware aspects. In fact, it's no exaggeration to say that the Steam Deck that you can purchase now is different from what it was a year ago. Pierre-Loup said, for example, if you compare the earliest version with the current model, there have been minor updates such as quieter fans and easier battery removal. Now, they have got to be getting tired of hearing this question. I've asked this question 1,000 times. I've seen comments from you all in the comments section down below that like button asking this a million times. When is the Steam Deck 2 coming? The interviewer asked them, when are we going to get the successor to the Steam Deck? And essentially, Pierre-Loup said this. He said, we have an idea for what specs we're aiming for the successor to the Steam Deck. However, we would like to continue to monitor the situation for about 2 years to avoid any problems such as old games or favorite games that have run on the current system not running on the successor. This is because we want both users and devs to have very little to worry about as possible. So first off, that 2 years thing we've heard before, and it makes a lot of sense. You know, Valve essentially needs to wait until the hardware is available or cheap enough so that they can make a system like the Steam Deck. I mean, look, they can make a super powerful system right now, and they can ship it, and they can charge $1,700 for it. You know, they can charge a lot of money for it, and people will buy it. But are they going to get that much more bang for their buck? I think what Valve wants to do is keep at this price point, somewhere between $400 and $650, because that is what has been very, very successful for them. I know that Valve has said that when they launched the Steam Deck, they were surprised to see that most people were buying the most expensive version. And so they might have that temptation to push the price up higher, but they've done the opposite. They've lowered the price by selling their refurbished units and constantly having the Steam Deck on sale. So it seems like Valve is waiting until they can actually hit this new target performance when that price gets low enough. And they're estimating that that's going to happen in about 2 years. They want current customers or future customers to feel like they don't have to worry that the rug is going to get pulled out from under them if they buy a Steam Deck tomorrow. Oh no, Valve just launched the next one. I have regret now. And they would want developers to be able to target one system at a time and say, all right, we want to make sure that our games are running on the Steam Deck. But if they bring that out too soon, then developers have a little bit more juggling that they have to do. And that's definitely good points. The rest of the interview is pretty great. I suggest you check it out. It's linked down below that like button. By the way, I said that because I wanted to see if the like button would light up when I said like, because I heard that that's a thing, and the subscribe button apparently lights up when I say subscribe. Did that happen? If it did, leave a comment down below. I want to know if it worked. And well, I'll know that it worked because I'm going to watch this and find out, but sounds cool. Anyway, moving on to some news about the Steam Deck. Diablo 4 is now on the Steam Deck and has been verified for the Steam Deck. This isn't a huge surprise. I have a guide out for how to run the battle.net version on the Steam Deck, and it really is pretty easy, but I don't think there's a whole lot of people that are super interested. In fact, Diablo 4 had concurrent levels on Steam of just 2,500 players, which for a game like Diablo 4 from a company like Blizzard is a really, really embarrassing number. And I know that people like crapping on Diablo 4, but I had a lot of fun with it when I was playing it. But as soon as I stopped, it didn't pull me back in. So I think that they've got to find some way to incentivize players to come back. And honestly, for a game like Diablo 4, it really ought to be a free-to-play game. You know, you've got skins and stuff that they can use to monetize people. Just make that game a free-to-play game. I could play it on my Xbox, my PlayStation, my Steam Deck, my PC, whatever I want to play it on, and I would probably spend some money on skins instead of buying the game, because I already bought the game twice, for crying out loud. I'm looking for help from you guys. I have been running into an issue with my Steam Deck, and I think it might be time for me to nuke my SSD from orbit. When I go to play a game, almost every time the game will start, but the Steam logo will not disappear. And this has been driving me crazy. Now, I have a solution. The solution is to reboot. I reboot, that doesn't happen anymore. But then the next game that I go to play, I run into the exact same issue. So I have Googled this and I have not found anything. If any of you know what this issue is, it started about a week ago. I don't know what happened. I'm currently running on the stable channel. I'm running on the just everything as like vanilla, essentially. And I'm having this issue, and I don't want to have to, wipe my hard drive and reinstall everything. But if I have to, that's what I'm going to do. But if you know of a solution, let me know in the comments down below that like button. Did it light up again? Anyway, let me know if you have a solution, and I will be forever appreciative. Also, Metal Gear 1 and 2 are now out, and apparently they run like hot garbage on a stick on the Steam Deck, which is disappointing, but I think it's probably only a matter of time. before Valve does some kind of wizardry and updates Proton in a way that makes these, these new Metal Gear games or these old Metal Gear games run well on the Steam Deck. I've heard it's kind of a mess, not just on the Steam Deck, but in general. So, they're not miracle workers, but they can make it better. And that's something that they've done a whole bunch of times. In fact, that's what this video is all about. From the Nerd Nest, I'm Bill. Stay rad, everybody.